Reunited by Rated Pony Star, read by Deathlights. Even after 5 years since the war ended, it was still hard for me to get used to the human lands. Having none of the magical energies that were prominent in Equestria, traveling here always made me feel like a piece of myself was missing. I was still baffled by the number of ponies who lived outside of Equestria. How they could live like this was mind-boggling to me. But I guess it was something they got used to over time. Because of this, the only time you'd see me in these lands was if it involved something diplomatic or political. Another less known reason was to check in on the condition of the former Princess Celestia in Paris, France. She was still in her coma, and it was decided that her trial for her crimes against both humanity and ponies would be held when she woke up. Today I was here for a different reason, besides speeches of forgiveness, and an Ursan PR event to promote friendship between the two races. Nor was I here to deal with a tense situation involving one of the many extremist groups from either side who wanted to continue the war and see the other side exterminated. No, I was here to visit an old friend. My eyes open to our sins, ready to beg for forgiveness. I have lost so much these past few years, I just wanted to gain something back for once. Cary, North Carolina was a nice town, as far as human ones go. It wasn't a surprise that Fluttershy chose to live in such a luscious and green environment with plenty of forests and flowers. Places like this, untouched by the war, were few and far between. It reminded me of forests back in Ponyville, so I guess it was some sort of familiar comfort to Fluttershy. Some things never changed. Sadly, friendship wasn't one of those things. When I was younger, back in our home dimension, I thought friendship could never be broken or destroyed. I had battled great evils and dealt with situations where the friendship I shared with my 5 best friends were tested time and time again. I didn't think the war would bring that to an end. Yet, I was wrong. Pinkie Pie and Rarity's remains were somewhere in Ponyville, most likely burned under rubble or blown to bits from the bombing. The town I once called home was still too dangerous to fix, even after all these years. There's barely any pony alive now from that town, and it served no economic, political, or military function. Thus, I had no choice but to put the repairs of the once great town at the bottom of the list. I at least made a memorial there, a place I went every year to place flowers, not just for the 2 friends I had lost that day, but for all those lost. The cakes, Mare, Cherry, Big Mac, Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, Bonbon, Amethyst Star, Caramel, and so many more. All gone. I didn't lose everybody. I still had Spike, my adopted brother, and the one who kept me from breaking down into a mess many times. Some of the residents from Ponyville, like Derpy, Diamond Tiara, Lucky, Berry Punch, and such, still sent cards to me during holidays. And my other close friends, besides Fluttershy, well, they were alive, but our friendships were forever dead. Rainbow Dash and Applejack were now terrorists who I had to struggle with hunting down along with the rest of the so-called equestrian freedom fighters. We had a big argument about my surrender to the humans, and they never accepted it. Both had lost so much, both friends and family, that they refused to make peace with humanity. They and so many who joined that so-called freedom group just couldn't accept that the world that we once knew was gone. They hated me, and their frequent attacks on both my ponies and humans made it clear that they would never give up. They were always a stubborn pair. All I had left was Spike, and he made it clear the only reason he was helping Equestria was because of me. He hadn't forgiven Ponykind for letting his kind and all the other races die without the means of raising and lowering the sun and moon. He was the last dragon of our world, and sometimes I still hear him cry in his bed at night. Even if I could find in my heart to forgive Celestia for all she had done, I couldn't forgive her for making my baby brother cry. Yet, despite having 2 friends dead, and the other 2 forever hating me, I still have one chance in saving something from my past. The only friend I turned away after she followed her heart and sided with humanity. Fluttershy. Under the cover of an illusion spell, I landed in front of a big blue house with children's toys, both human and pony, scattered across the lawn. There is a beautiful garden of all sorts of flowers near a red van parked beside a shed. For the first time since my negotiations with humanity 5 years ago, I was too nervous to advance for a long time. I was going to see Fluttershy for the first time in years. A good portion of those were spent in anger, disgust, and hatred over the fact she sold out her own kind, siding with a corrupt and dangerous race of war-making murderers. Only, it turned out that we were the corrupt and dangerous race, manipulated by a monster who sought to create a pony-only world for whatever twisted reasons. A monster who let everyone else in our world die, and willing to exterminate an entire race of a different world to do so. I was no longer blinded by the sun, nor was the rest of my kind. The day I exposed everything was the day that Celestia was not just hated by humanity anymore. Every pony, except for the freedom fighters and other minor groups, wanted to see her die for what she had done. A year after that, I sought to find Fluttershy. I didn't know what I was going to do. Beg for forgiveness? Say she was right? A simple hello? Would she even forgive me? I knew we couldn't go back to what we once had, but could we at least start over? These questions continued to haunt me as I took each step towards the door. From what little information I could get, Fluttershy worked in a pet daycare, and was married to a human of all things, a doctor specifically. Pony-human relationship in terms of actual romance were mixed. Some saw it as a way to heal the damage between our races. Others found it sinful and disgusting. Most importantly, she was a mother. Ponies and humans couldn't have children together at least. Not yet anyways, but I knew she adopted 3 children after the war. 2 humans and 1 pony, a Pegasus like her. This made me worry even more, since not only did I have to make up to Fluttershy, but prove myself as a decent pony to her family, despite what some papers still say about me. I finally arrived at the big red door with a smiling sun that had the word greetings on it. Now I'd wish I had taken Spike's offer to come with me, or at least brought some of my guards. Why did I have to be so stubborn and fix my own problems by myself? I could have at least phoned ahead. I raised my hoof and knocked, turning off my illusion spell as well. I waited until the sound of hoofsteps coming towards the door, but they were small to be an adult's. The door opened, and I saw a brown male Pegasus with a black mane look up at me with curiosity. He had no cutie mark, and he looked to be no older than 6. This had to be Feathershy, the pony that Fluttershy and her husband adopted. Who are you? I'm sorry, is your mother home? I asked in the kindest voice possible. He slowly hid himself behind the door, nervously looking at me like he was expecting me to attack. If it wasn't for the fact he was adopted, I could have sworn he was Fluttershy's flesh and blood. Who should I say is calling? Twilight Sparkle, I'm an old friend, or at least I still hope I am still. I answered honestly. I still expect to get rejected by this cult. Instead, I heard somebody walk forward, and for the first time in so long, I saw my old friend. She had gotten her mane cropped. It was so much shorter, and it looked to have been darkened over the years. She was much taller and leaner too. I noticed a few scars in her body, most likely from the war. I heard she took a medical training to help humanity during the war. But it seems she went into combat rather than just be stationary. Her eyes were still bright, yet there seemed to be a lost glimmer of joy she once had. Most likely another side effect of the war. Yet, despite all this, she still looked beautiful. Rarity might have been the prettiest of us all, but she was wearing makeup. But Fluttershy always had a natural beauty with her. Twilight, whispered Fluttershy, who stared at me in shock before a small smile graced her lips. Is it really you? Fluttershy, I tried to say something, anything. The fact that we were seeing each other after all these years, after all the chaos we went through for so long, and I didn't know what to say. A million things went through my head, from simple apologies to full speeches asking for forgiveness. Yet I stood there with my mouth opening and closing, eyes misting and my entire body shaking. Suddenly, she wrapped her forelimbs around me and nuzzled my neck. I froze up as if the familiar kindness she always radiated washed over me. In an instant, I cried. I cried for our lost relationship. I cried for our friends. I cried how I was too foolish and blinded to see that she was right all this time. I cried because I could tell, right then and there, that Fluttershy had never stopped once being my friend. "It's okay, Twilight. Let it all out," whispered Fluttershy as I lost control of my body. If not for her holding me, stroking me, whispering in my ear soothing words of comfort, I would have collapsed to the ground. In that single moment, I was not Princess Twilight. I was not Master Sparkle. I was just Twilight. After calming myself down, Fluttershy guided me into her warm home. It was cozy, looked family-friendly, and reminded me a bit of the home back in Ponyville. A few animals could be seen, like some cats, dogs, and birds, but less than what she had in her cottage. I saw pictures of her family, including her other 2 children, both human, who she said were still at school, and her husband at work. Feathershy was still too scared to go to school yet, so Fluttershy was homeschooling him until he felt ready to go. The little Cole seemed to warm up to me after his mother introduced me as her friend. Friend. I was still her friend. I repeated that over and over again to forever keep that in my mind. I was still her friend. Feathershy then excused himself to go play with his toys upstairs, leaving the 2 of us sit on the couch with some warm green tea. "I apologize for my son. He's quite shy when it comes to strangers," Fluttershy said, handing me a cup. I wonder where he got that from. I joked, which made us both giggle. We drank a bit of our tea before looking at each other with smiles on our faces. "Fluttershy, I'm so happy to see you again. I'm sorry about what I said. She raised a hoof and stopped me, increasing her smile, then shook her head and said, "Twilight, I never once hated you or any of the others after I sided with humanity. I don't blame you for following Celestia. We were all fooled." "I know," I whispered. "But still, I can't believe the one man I looked up to most of my life was such a horrible being." Fluttershy pressed her hoof against mine. "Do you hate her?" she asked quietly. "How can I not?" I shouted, but suddenly remembered that Feathershy was right above us, so I lowered my voice. "She lied to us. She let all those other races back home die, including our friends Zecora, Little Stronghooves, Gilda, and more, all the while saying everything was fine. She tried to eradicate an entire race just so she could create some kind of pony utopia. Even the few griffins, minotaurs, zebras, and donkeys that did come from them during the transportation across the dimensions were gone. They had rebelled against us during the war, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Celestia demanded that they be rounded up and held captive until the war was over. But they managed to take over some of our ships and tried to head over to the human lands containing all the remaining non-ponies of Equestria. Our navy sunk them on one of the naval commander's orders. But even now, I can't tell if it's his decision or Princess Celestia's. She put a strain on our kind that will last forever. Even if all of humanity was to forgive us for what we did, it will never fade away. Never be forgotten. She betrayed everything we ever stood for, and ruined us, ruined our friendship." I closed my eyes and a tear dripped down my cheek. I can't forgive her, Fluttershy. All I want to know, before they sentence her to die when she wakes up, is why she did all this. I just want to know before I write her out of my life completely. "It isn't easy, is it?" asked Fluttershy as she hugged me again. "You've suffered so much, with the war, with the princess, all the loss, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash." I winced. "You know, we do get news of what's going on in Equestria here, Twilight," said Fluttershy as she nodded towards her big screen TV. "This may be the place where I live now, possibly for the rest of my life, but Equestria will always be my home." She closed her eyes as a tear dripped down her face. Can you show them mercy for what they've done, if they were to surrender?" I shook my head. I don't think she was expecting my answer anyway. "I can't. Innocent lives have been lost because of the Equestrian freedom fighters. Actions that Dash and Applejack had taken to cause both ponies and humans to die, Fluttershy. Even if I wanted to spare them from the death penalty, the UN will not. I'm sorry, Fluttershy, but their fate is sealed. They will either die fighting, or be captured and executed." I know. Fluttershy whispered as she drank her tea. I just wish all the fighting was over. Haven't we lost enough on both sides? I wish everyone felt the same as you did, Fluttershy. I'm just so tired. I whispered as I sank into her couch. I'm tired of politics, tired of having the weight of our race on my shoulders. Tired of appeasing, arguing, and demanding things while dealing with a nation that doesn't know if they should love me or hate me. I'm tired of humans looking at me with disgust, although I can't blame them. Sometimes I think about just taking Spike and leaving it all. Just going away someplace and living out the rest of my days alone. But I won't be alone. I just want a friend. I glanced at Fluttershy, who is now openly crying. I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you after the war. After everything. I should have helped you deal with this. No, you had your family to take care of, Fluttershy. I argued as I sat up, brushing her tears away with my wings. You had responsibilities, and to be honest, I wouldn't want you to be involved with the things I have to deal with now. I still could have been there as your friend to talk and listen, said Fluttershy. She wiped her eyes. I just have to keep trying to put the war behind me and move on. To my shame, I never thought once about meeting up with you again. I thought you hated me. To be honest, I thought you hated me. I confessed, lowering my head in shame. I called you a traitor and a coward. I hated you for choosing humanity over us, for listening to Lyre over me, but you were right. I was wrong. Twilight, whispered Fluttershy as she shook her head. Don't blame yourself. There's only one pony to blame for all this, and when she wakes up, she will pay. My eyes widened as I heard this and turned to my friend, who had a tint of rage in her eyes that I rarely ever saw in the past. I never thought I'd hear you say that about any pony. War changes us, Twilight. She answered, shaking her head. All my children, they lost their parents in the war. Fluttershy was too young to remember his, but my other children still have nightmares from time to time. My husband and I do all we can to soothe their tears and fears. I'll help them have a future that Celestia would have denied them if it's the last thing I do on this earth. You've gotten a lot braver, Fluttershy. I replied with a smile. It's hard to believe that this was the same pony that had once been afraid of her own shadow. Blushing, she thanked me, and we soon turned the conversation elsewhere. I asked her about her husband and children. She asked me about Spike. I asked about Discord, who I was surprised to learn was using his powers to fix ruined cities. I guess war can change things, even the spirit of chaos. We talked about old times, avoiding anything unpleasant. Eventually, time flew by so fast, before I knew it, it was 3 hours since I arrived. It's getting late, I guess I should go back to my hotel, I said, rising up. Fluttershy quickly got up and rushed in front of me. Wait, don't you want to meet my husband, my other children too? In fact, let me take you to dinner, and a Coralina Hurricanes game. Oh, there's a nice little fair this weekend we can go to. I do want to do those things, Fluttershy, but I don't want to be a bother. No! She shouted, stomping her hoof. Twilight Sparkle, we haven't seen each other in years. While talking to you was great, I want to do more than that. I want to hang out with my friend. I want my family to meet one of the kindest, wisest, and friendliest ponies I know. I want you in my life, and I want to be part of yours. I don't want the war, Celestia, or the past to keep us from what we should have continued to have been. Friends, Twilight Sparkle, I want us to be real friends again. I stared at Fluttershy for the longest time. I saw such determination in her glare that I swore I was under the stare. Once again, I got teary-eyed as I found myself glowing inside with the same spirit she had. Yes, I wanted to be real friends with her again. For just a few days, the world could go without Twilight Sparkle. So, where's America get a good hamburger around here? I said with a smile on my face. War may change friendship, but some things will always stay the same.